Welcome back to Small Soldier. It's been a while. In today's video, I'll go over some of the final build and paint sequences on the Trumpeter 1/200 scale HMS Hood. That's right, it's done. Let's get right to it. Hello my friends, and welcome back to another Small Soldier video. It's been so long since my last video, and I have to apologize, and I really appreciate everyone's patience with me. But as I'm sure most of you are aware, sometimes our hobbies can take a backseat to work, family life, and the occasional honey-do list. Oh yeah, let's not forget this massive ship project that I've been working on for the last 3 months. Anyway, now that this ship project is done, I should be able to get back to more consistent content. If you've never built a ship model before, well, be prepared for a lot of masking. I really had no idea how to go about masking this ship off. I've never built a ship model before, and most of what I did while building this was just trial and error. As you can see, I had to move this painting project out into my garage. The ship was just way too big to paint in my studio, and the overspray would have been incredible. You'll also notice I have the model on a Lazy Susan. I used this for most of the build. Just because the ship is so big, I needed to be able to turn it as I was building it, and this seemed to be the most logical solution for me. And of course, the most satisfying part of any painting procedure, the unmasking. Well, no swearing here anyway. And a nice straight black line was revealed as the tape was pulled off. If you're wondering why I didn't paint the lower hull red, well, the reason is, according to the HMS HOOD Society and some recent documents that were found, it appears that the HMS Hood more than likely was painted with a dark gray base color for the lower hull rather than a red. All the research tends to lean towards this theory, and I thought the gray was a little different and made it look a little more interesting anyway. Painting around all this detail was actually quite monotonous, but I thought it would be a lot easier doing it this way than to mask off every individual item, and in the end I think I kept my sanity somewhat. This does seem like a lot of work, and you're probably wondering, why did I do it this way and not mask things off? To be honest, I don't know. I've never done a ship before, so I don't know if doing it this way was the proper way. I know it just worked for me, and it kept me somewhat sane in the end. If you're a ship modeler and you've got better and easier ways of doing this, I'd love to hear your take on building a ship model. Please leave that in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this. This is a really good wash straight out of the bottle. I find it gives items a nice dirty, grimy look without being too over the top. I really need to get myself a pair of proper tweezers for handling delicate items. I've added some Tamiya tape to this pair of tweezers, hoping that it would work to alleviate damages to any delicate parts. It did work somewhat, but I found the parts would slide out too easily. If you guys know where I can find that type of item, I'd appreciate knowing that, so leave a comment below. In hindsight, I wish I would have painted white over this first and then painted the colors over top. Especially for the blue section, I found I really needed to put a lot of paint on to make it cover properly. I knew this before I even started painting the rondelle. Thought I was just being lazy. Just goes to show, do it right the first time and it'll take you a lot less time to make something look the way it should. Anyway, it turned out and I was happy with the results in the end. I love to see a project come together when you get the paint on everything, but it's kind of a bittersweet feeling to know you're covering up all that photo etch work that you did and no one will actually ever see the amount of work you actually put into something once the paint goes on. But as long as we know it's there, that's all that matters. Yes, I certainly went through a ton of masking tape on this project. I don't even know how much tape I used. I didn't keep track, but it was a lot. Again, sweet satisfaction when you pull the tape off, every time. Well, barring there isn't any paint disasters. Another area of contention is the color of the blast bags. Some say they were light gray, some say white, some say dark gray. I went with the medium gray, the only reason being I thought it looked right. On this model I was going for more of a light stained effect over the whole thing. I wanted to give it a bit of a weathered look, but I didn't want to go crazy with it. That's why I chose this burnt umber Payne's gray mix. And on the outside of the ship, as here, I just used Payne's gray and created kind of a rain streaked pattern just to give it a little bit of light weathering without going overboard. I didn't use any kind of protective top coat or varnish on this model. I just went straight over the base color. It is a Tamiya rattle can primer as the base color for this model. It is a lacquer and I find it's quite tough and can handle a lot of punishment and abuse. I mean, unless you're putting lacquer based paints over top of it, then you'd have a problem. But since I was going with oils and odorless thinner, it really didn't give me any issues whatsoever. When doing this rain streaking effect, I find I like to saturate the entire area and then keep working the paint up and down until it's almost dry, and then I just kind of leave it and you end up with some nice, very subtle rain streaks. You really have to wait until it's fully dry or dry it with a hairdryer to see the full extent of the effect. It really isn't apparent until it's fully dry. If subtle is what you're going for, this may be the effect that you want to try. The pin wash is a more concentrated version of the wash. And once that's on, I go in and clean up all the tide marks that are left. This just helps to keep things looking a little more tidy and more precise. Like I said, I didn't use a varnish on this model, but to get the paint to flow around everything nicely, I wet the area with clean thinner, let it dry for about 10 minutes, and then go in with my pin wash, and capillary action will help pull the paint around all those details rather cleanly. I found myself here saying, oh boy, I'm really making progress, parts are getting glued on, this thing really is coming together, and I actually saw light at the end of the tunnel. If you've never tried rigging before, well, you're in for a challenge. I mean, it is doable, it just takes a lot of patience.
Son of a gun. You thought I was gonna say son of a bitch, didn't you?
Oh, that was minor compared to some of the words I said. Oh, if these walls could talk. I did finally figure out that if you put the accelerator on the area that you want to stick the rigging to first, it does make the process a lot easier, and the thoughts of taking a hammer to your model just disappear. Like I said before, clean thinner is the key here. Just lay that on, let it sit for 10 minutes, and add your pin wash, and it works like a dream. When building a ship model, you almost have to think of it as if you're building, let's say, a Warhammer army. There's multiple parts and lots of parts that are the same. It can be very mind-numbing, and you have to work in an assembly line fashion if you want to keep your sanity. In my opinion, graphite is one of the best materials for giving gun barrels a realistic looking metal sheen. For the initial rigging, I was using Easy Line, and to me it seemed a little heavy and clunky for this scale, so I decided to try the Ushi brand rigging instead. Instantly, I was very impressed with this material. It was more in scale, and to be honest, just much easier to work with. So if you're looking for something to rig that thing, go for Ushi. It's my favorite brand now, and I highly recommend it. For the 15-inch guns, I thought I would go just a tad heavier on the weathering. I think the main guns of any ship model are really the most important part. Well, let's face it, it's a part that keeps the ship out of harm's way. It goes boom and shoots explodey things. Who doesn't like that? Anyway, I thought they deserved the attention. For the blast bags, I painted them just like I would any stowage or tarp material that I would do on a piece of armor or on a figure. I like to add about 3 or 4 different shadow colors and then come in with a final glaze of the base color just to tie everything together and create a uniform look. Not bad if I do say so myself. For the fine detail work I'm about to do here, nothing beats a full-bodied brush with a really good tip to deliver your paint precisely to the areas you need it to go. So far, these Artist Opus brushes have been very good, and I've been extremely happy with the way they've been performing. My personal choice for brushes are Kolinsky Sable. Some of my Sable brushes have lasted me years. Actually, some have lasted decades, to be honest. And when it comes to brushes, you really get what you pay for. So try and get the best you can afford, because you'll end up spending just as much on cheap brushes in the long run as you will on an expensive brush. But that expensive brush will last you a lot longer and give you much better results. For small scale modeling, this product is really good for making scale glass and lenses. And when you've got dozens of these to make, it really saves you time. These were so much fun to work on. I really like the way they turned out, and I think they give the ship a lot of character. For the most part, like I said, the weathering on the ship I left quite restrained, but when it came to the anchors, I figured, they're going to be in the water a lot, so they're going to see a lot more wear and tear and rust. So I thought the anchors deserved a little more action as far as weathering goes, so the final look I was going for became a little more extreme. Yeah, that works. Anchor chains and stoppers got the same thorough beating. I'm not sure what the f I was thinking here. Work smarter, not harder. Like I said earlier, weathering was kept to a minimum, but hey, what's an anchor without some staining on the side of the ship? This was done in several layers. I was trying to achieve more depth and interest by dissolving each layer into one another. And in the end, I think I achieved a subtle yet convincing staining effect that looked authentic without being too garish. Mounting the boats to their stands gave me another opportunity to think, I can't believe I'm really gonna finish this thing. Then there was this. Yep, I really had no idea how I was gonna tackle these handrails. How do you get the piece to stay on the ship, hold it at the same time, and glue it and keep it straight? I had no idea until I came across this glue. This had been sitting in my stash for years. I've never used it once, and I was getting desperate and I was willing to try anything at this point. I knew this glue didn't dry, it stayed tacky, so I was hoping that it would actually work, and it did. I was able to place the rail, have them sit there on their own, add the CA glue, and it was beautiful. It worked exactly like I'd hoped it would. And the money shot.
Let's go, Jeff, go!
If you have any tips for mounting handrails, please leave your comment below. I'd love to hear them. Tinfoil is a great option for making flags, especially small scale flags. The material is light enough that you'll be able to mount it on the rigging without the rigging moving around too much. Decals have no problem sticking to tinfoil, and you're able to bend it to shape without the fear of cracking.
1 hour later.
I'm using a brand new blade here. If you don't use a brand new blade, there is a chance you can tear the foil because it is very thin. The main reason I repaint the flag is because the edges of the tin foil will show as foil, so you have to get rid of that edge, and I find it also helps to blend in and look a little more realistic than to leave the decal as is. Of course, it does take extra time to do this, but in the end, like anything, I think it really adds that extra blast of realism. And what's the point of having a straight flag on a ship? You may as well add a little bit of wind-blown look to it, and by adding a cocktail stick and giving it a little bend, you can come up with something pretty realistic looking. Again, it was Hobby Tack to the rescue. Think of it as repositionable CA glue. A few touch-ups and the flags were done. After many months and many hours, my friends, that's right. Alright, that's a wrap up. It really took a long time to build that model, and I hope I did it justice. Anyway, if you learned something from this video, or at least found it entertaining, this all really helps me and lets YouTube know that you enjoy these kind of videos, and they'll promote my videos to other people just like you. And don't forget to keep those brushes wet.